But when you look at a pattern of a temperature pattern, monthly pattern of a user, you can see so many things out of it. And this, as I said, knowledge is power. So you can really understand your hormonal balance, for example. You can really understand what's going on in your body if you only see what your body transmits outside, if I might say.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Natural Womanhood Podcast. I'm so excited to be sitting down with Michael Vardi today. He is the CEO of TempDrop. Now, TempDrop has been around for as long as Natural Womanhood has, actually. I figured out the other day that they started their Kickstarter in 2014, which was when the very first iteration of the Natural Womanhood website popped up on the interwebs. So we're about the same age, our respective organizations, and we've been working in the women's health space for the same time. So we've seen a lot of the same trends. So we're really eager to dive in with Michael today to talk about TempDrop as one of really kind of one of the OG pieces of Femtech. I think you guys can probably claim that title. So yeah, really excited to have you here today. And he did let me know before I hit record that he has not ever done a podcast interview. So we have that unique distinction at Natural Womanhood of being the first to interview Michael Vardi, the CEO of TempDrop, on our podcast today. So without further ado, Michael, could you please give our listeners and viewers a brief introduction of yourself, please?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much, Grace, for giving me this opportunity. It is my first time, and generally I'm away from the spotlights. I'd like to also say that English is not my native language, so I might have some issues and maybe I'll forget some words, so please forgive that as well. About TempDrop, so yeah, my name is Michael Vardi. I'm almost 50 now. TempDrop has been my life's journey in the past, well, actually since 2012. That was a little before 2014. Beginning of 2012, I thought to myself to embark on a journey of inventing something, and I have, and it's been a crazy journey since then. Some background about me, I hold a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in biomedical engineering. And in early 2012, I finished the previous position that I had as I headed a startup company in the medical device industry. And then I thought I'd like to think on my own about an idea. And I started to browse and do some research. And I found that measuring body temperature on the skin is a challenge, and I also believe that the responsibility should be on the patient and can be on the patient. So the idea was to develop something that will record temperature very, very accurately and sync it to any app basically that will require the usage of inaccurate body temperature.
And so was this, were there
This is how.
fertility awareness apps at this point? There might have been a few, but not very many, right? If we're going all the way back to 2012. And was your goal always for it to be used for fertility awareness and to pair with a fertility awareness app?
So initially I thought, okay, temperature, what can we do with temperature? And of course there was, babies and maybe chemotherapy patients that need close temperature monitoring to indicate some inflammation or something. And also there was fertility awareness
Right.
or BBT tracking, which when I did the market research, I found out about it, but I also remember that during the second time, we have three kids now, my wife and I. And the first one, my firstborn Maya, who's now 19 already, we got pregnant really quickly. And the second one took some time. And this was basically the first time I was aware or heard of, the correlation between body
Yeah.
temperature and the cycle, and this
Yeah.
I became aware of it. So when I started looking into various applications of accurate temperature monitoring, it was clear that tracking body temperature to track fertility would be a significant goal. And when I started doing the research, I found out that there are so many fertility awareness methods, and they all basically have different rules, but they most rely on accurate BBT tracking, accurate temperature tracking. So this is basically what caused me to start. And when I mapped the fertility apps that were back then, I'm talking 2012. I still remember a few Women Log, and so I still remember a few very, very old fertility apps. I reached out to all of them, or actually to the top 20, I would say, and I emailed them if they would need an accurate way to implement the user's BBT. So the whole idea in the beginning was to develop a sensor that will feed the BBT, accurate BBT to apps, without TempDrop needing to choose if you want to get pregnant or you want to avoid. It's basically just bring to the users accurate data that they can make use of.
And so you were obviously also trying to make it easier, right? Because basal body thermometers, oral thermometers, have existed for a while now. And I mean, I'm super old school. That's what I still use with my fertility awareness method. But obviously, that's a big sticking point for a lot of women, is that it's not so easy to wake up at the same time every morning, especially if you do shift work or you've got kids keeping you up at night, to remember to take your temperature at the same time every morning. And so were you seeing some of those issues when you and your wife were starting to explore using basal body temperature, and that kind of got you on the path of thinking, well, can we figure out a wearable device?
Well, actually, my wife we never practiced tracking BBT because she gave up right away. It was just too difficult. This is when I became aware, of the concept and of the tool, the way that you can track your fertility by documenting your BBT daily. Yes, for sure. I mean, it was clear that it's a true hassle, and it was also clear to me that fertility app developers would benefit from accurate and ongoing, like daily input of BBT that will help them provide accurate predictions. That was the whole point from the start.
So a lot of different things going on there to help the tech advance to better help women, and then also just for the ease of use for using this important biomarker of our fertility data as women. And it's not news, or not new news rather, that temperature is associated with the cycle. I forget, I think it was a woman physician who first discovered it. I want to say, I might be wrong about that, but over 100 years ago now, I think we've known. And so it's funny to see how that initial discovery has now morphed into all of these methods that use this really important biomarker that it really hinges on. It's still one of the only ways that you at home can confirm ovulation.
And an objective way as well.
Because even your cervical mucus, you can't necessarily confirm that ovulation has happened. You can follow the pattern, and we can kind of infer from the pattern that we see with cervical mucus whether or not you've ovulated. But BBT still remains until some of the newer devices on the market that are going to maybe allow women to test their own blood and their own urine at home. Until those kind of make it into the wider market, basal body temperature still remains one of the only, if the only way to confirm that you actually have ovulated. And obviously doesn't come with the same kind of ick factor that some women might feel with a device that might test their blood or their urine.
And now just imagine if we can, instead of just measuring your temperature at, let's say, 6 a.m. in the morning for, I don't know, a minute or two, if you if you were with your mouth open just before you woke up, or if you were
Mm-hmm.
not sleeping very well, or if you woke up a few hours before, then there's a lot of noise going into that single
Right.
measurement point, where TempDrop collects the data from two temperature channels throughout the night and also acceleration, so we can identify
Oh,
sleep wake
interesting.
times. So take all of this data and summarize it to just one specific temperature that will represent your sleeping temperature, and learn those patterns,
Mm-hmm.
the nightly pattern that each one has, the nightly temperature pattern and the monthly pattern,
Oh,
the more
okay.
you use it. So it's not only just making it easier to track your temperature, but it's really trying to provide the most accurate measurement that you can in order to
Yeah,
get
because like you
that
said,
BBC
it kind of
result.
it clears out some of the noise that you might get just from taking a single oral temp first thing in the morning. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing that I think is really cool about TempDrop is you go to your website and you actually talk about fertility awareness methods, right? You talk about how it can be used in concert with a fertility awareness method. Where I see a lot of the femtech out there now almost billing itself as a replacement for a fertility awareness method. And so I really appreciate that TempDrop seems like you guys want women to kind of work in concert with a fertility awareness method, which I think is important because I think there's a tendency for women for anyone, to want to rely on a device to tell them about what they're seeing, whereas I think it's a lot more beneficial for women to actually learn a method and learn to read the signs of their bodies, and to not have a device or an app tell them where they are in their fertility. I want women to know what's going on, and not be overly reliant on tech. And so I am excited when I see a femtech device that comes out that says, oh, we want you to pair us with your fertility awareness method. We don't want to completely take over for it, basically, in a nutshell. So I'm curious, what methods do y'all pair, either officially with the TempDrop, or anecdotally, what methods have you heard women successfully pairing the TempDrop with?
First, I'd like to relate to the general approach of us promoting or talking in many occasions
Mm-hmm.
about fertility awareness methods, and the fact that you need to learn your body and you need to learn what all these things mean. This is exactly the approach that I think
Yeah,
got
I
TempDrop
agree.
to where it is, because from day one, from the just imagine me, an engineer guy who knows a little bit about the
Right.
fact that there is a correlation, but has no idea about the fam world. I did not have
Yeah.
any idea about the fam world. And when I launched the campaign in 2014, I started asking users, is this what you want? Is this what you need? And then from the community, from the users, I got a lot of understanding that women want to
Yeah.
understand their bodies more, rather than people or doctors or other people tell them what to do or
Yeah.
tell them about their bodies. So the whole approach of sharing the data with you and sharing and potentially implementing that into third-party apps that can make use of that data for anything that the
Mm-hmm.
user would benefit from. It doesn't really matter as long as we help the user. So this approach, I think, very naturally got us into, being quite popular in fertility
Yeah.
awareness forums, groups. Many of our Facebook group members are fertility awareness, a lot of instructors, many users, and and I think that knowledge is what's most important for us as consumers to be smart and to make conscious decisions based
Mm-hmm.
on what
Yeah.
we
Oh
know.
gosh, I love that you went into the fertility awareness forums when they were really in their infancy. There were some Facebook groups back in the day. I'm sure that you were in asking women about. And I love
Yes,
that. I think
yes,
that's so
indeed.
great. And yeah, it really does speak to the fact that And I think still, even with the explosion in femtech, that women really do want to understand their bodies, and that the ethos of any femtech device really should be to, we want to help facilitate that knowledge. We want to help facilitate that body literacy. So I love to hear that that's a driving force behind what you're doing at TempDrop from the beginning. So I want to kind of pivot now and talk about, why women are seeking out body literacy, why they're seeking out femtech. And, I think it's undoubtedly this explosion we've seen in the femtech scene in the last, 10 to 15 years absolutely has to do with the fact that so many women are looking for family planning options outside of hormonal contraception. They're fed up with the side effects, or they just want to look for something that's a bit more natural. Whatever their reasons are, it really does seem that the explosion of femtech and this mass kind of exodus from the contraceptive market, I guess we could say, by women have risen in concert. What kinds of trends do you see around the world, if you have that kind of vantage, based on your sales, or the community on TempDrop, because I know you've got kind of like some like community blogging kind of things I've seen on the website. So who's most interested? Where are you getting the most engagement? Where are you seeing the most sales? What kind of what's your perspective as the CEO of this global femtech company?
I think North America, of course, is a very big market. The United States, Canada, Europe as well. Anything that in Europe there are many fertility awareness methods. I remember I was in a conference a few years ago of some umbrella organization of various fertility awareness methods, mostly popular in Europe. So you have all of these various methods who use temperature when they track their fertility, and the more awareness and the more knowledge you have about fertility awareness methods, you would look for such solutions like TempDrop. And in those places where there is less technology, less awareness, less education, I'd say women would be more easy sticking to the pill, for example. But for me, it doesn't make sense, and I guess to a lot of women as well, it doesn't make sense if you're fertile, for 4 days or 5 days in your cycle to take hormones for the whole
For
cycle.
years on
It doesn't
end
make sense.
too,
And
right?
if you just
Yeah.
for years on end, yeah. And if you just me as a guy, so when I track my steps and I circle the block, I don't have too much insights to gain from that. But when you look at a pattern of a temperature pattern, monthly pattern of a user, you can see so many things out of it. And this, as I said, knowledge is power. So you can really understand your hormonal balance, for example. You can really understand what's going on in your body if you only see what your body transmits outside, if I might say. So I think that anywhere that will promote technology, adoption of new technologies, adoption of technologies that will allow fertility awareness methods and fertility tracking in general to be more easily adoptable, I think this is basically where the whole market is going.
Do you think a lot of women coming to femtech, or at least coming to TempDrop, I guess, already have something of a baseline understanding of fertility awareness, and then they're looking for TempDrop, they're looking for the femtech data to make it easier for them to use it? Or do you think they're hearing about femtech itself or a device itself and using it and kind of learning along the way? I'm curious just what the kind of general baseline knowledge of your users is.
No, I think they're looking for technology. I think that they're looking for technology that will help them accomplish their goals. The goal can be either get pregnant. The goal can be, I want to be healthier. I don't want to. I know that there are other options to the pill. There are other options to hormonal birth control, and As you know, Apple Watch now has BBT in it. I mean, I won't talk too much about the comparison between TempDrop and Apple Watch, the how clear
Yeah.
the charts are. But it is something that will bring more awareness. It already brings more awareness to
Yeah.
ovulation tracking using
Yeah.
temperature measurements. So so yeah, I think it's the wider options that available. When you hear there's the Aura Ring can work with natural cycles. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of media and PR about those things. So naturally, women hear about them, and when their goal is something related to fertility, either understand your body, track your cycle, maybe avoid pregnancy naturally, or get pregnant, they're just they're starting to search for those solutions out
Yeah.
there. Um, and and I think that what we do is, as I said, we try to engage them
Yeah.
with the knowledge. We have the TempDrop Academy. We try to teach them about fertility
Yeah.
awareness methods in general. Go learn. It's your body. We just help you understand what's going on in it.
So that's really interesting because I think for me it sounds like back in the early days of TempDrop first getting started and you doing this research and doing the Kickstarter for the fertility or for the TempDrop. It was probably women who were already so in the know about fertility awareness, but just looking to make something easier. But now it sounds like we're in a position where hearing about a device that might help you get pregnant and you're really trying to get pregnant might actually be starting to lead women to this understanding of fertility awareness. It's flipping, right? Which I think is really cool. And I hadn't actually ever considered that before, that this tech might actually be almost a gateway for a lot of women to learning more about their bodies, who really had no idea that this was even a thing that they could do.
Yes. Just imagine you have a goal of getting pregnant, and then suddenly you see that your body,
Yeah.
it speaks.
Yeah.
It tells you a story. Suddenly you can understand it, and you don't have to control
Yeah.
it with chemicals.
Yeah, very cool. That's I'm seeing Femtech in a new light now, which I think is really neat.
But by the way, I think that FAM and FAM communities is what
Yeah,
helped TempDrop grow. 100%. We were very,
yeah,
the word of mouth that happy users, from the day when we started to fulfill those pre-orders. So the
yeah,
campaign was 2014, but it took another 3 years because
yep,
we were a bootstrap company. I didn't raise money that time, so it was really growing very slowly
yeah,
from pre-orders. So when we officially launched in 2017 and fulfilled, it was 1,200 first temp drops ever. Then and we opened the Facebook group. Then we saw how women
yeah,
just tell
yeah,
their friends, and and this is how
yeah.
we
That's
started,
really
I
cool.
guess.
I think that's really neat. And I think probably you guys were one of the first, if not the first. Are you the first wearable thermometer? Okay, so you are the first.
Yes,
And
yes.
since then, there have been others, but are you the only one that does basal body temperature? Do others do basal? Are you aware?
Um, really refers to what do you call as basal temperature. I like to refer to it
Okay.
as sleeping
Yeah.
temperature, and I guess that other like Aura, they also have their sleeping temperature, but I'd say that the accuracy
Yeah, and
is
so that's
different.
that's kind of where I was gonna go from here is that I think one of the reasons TempDrop was so embraced by the fertility awareness community and why it remains such a mainstay, even with a lot of the other tech that's come along, is the emphasis on it being a basal body temperature, the temperature at rest, your temperature at sleep. Whereas I'm seeing with some of the newer tech, I'm a little bit suspicious because I've grew up in the era of symptothermal is always going to be basal body temperature, right? Where I see, like, my sister got an Aura ring, and I'm teaching her the Sympto-Thermal method right now because she's getting married in a few months. And I told her, well, it's not quite basal body temperature in the sense of, your sleep at rest. So I told her, you wear it by all means, but my recommendation for her was still take the oral temperature at the same time every morning and at least just kind of make sure that the patterns,
Compare the
yeah,
patterns. Just compare the patterns. If you get similar patterns, I would say,
yeah,
yeah, you can use the Ori, but it's really the quality
yeah,
of the patterns because there's so much
yeah.
they can tell.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think there's
so
there's a way to use other devices that don't necessarily do basal body temperature, but I as a fertility awareness user and instructor of the Sympto-Thermal method, I'm a little bit hesitant to put my full like stamp on them until there's more data around how well those patterns match up with basal body temperature. Because I mean I think there's a reason why that's been the gold standard. With every symptothermal method, every iteration of it that's ever come out. So I guess that's the caveat there with the other ones, huh?
but I want to
Okay.
share a secret with you that very early days, even when the beginning of TempDrop was when I recorded
Mm-hmm.
sleeping temperature patterns,
Mm-hmm.
monthly patterns of women, and then so if there's a nightly pattern, of course the whole pattern goes
Mm-hmm.
up after ovulation and then down at
Right.
at menstruation. So if there's so much data that you can get from that pattern, from the whole night's pattern, that focusing on basal body temperature, I mean, I'm just referring to the term basal body temperature, I think originates from ideally measuring your body temperature, the lowest temperature, which is, I don't know, 5 a.m. if you
Mm-hmm.
wake up at
Mm-hmm.
7, 6 or 7. Um, yeah, you would want to get that temperature, but you have a lot of information from the
Hmm.
nightly pattern that can help you, how I might say, zoom in on the true BBT area that you would
Okay.
like to retrieve.
That's interesting. So there is more information to be gleaned then over the whole course of a night's sleep, temperature
Yes,
wise.
yes, indeed.
That's
Yes,
really
yes,
interesting.
indeed.
I'm curious, since you mentioned back when you were developing temp drop, measuring women's sleep, what were you telling them when you signed women up to do this? I'd love to hear a little bit
I
about that.
this is exactly why the fan community is so rooted in the growth and
Uh-huh.
the creation of TempDrop. I found the community of FAM
Uh-huh.
instructors here in
Yep.
Israel, which was very small, and I reached out to them and I said, "Listen, this is what I'm developing. I'm trying to develop a sensor that will sync to any app out there, but ideally would be like you don't need to wake up in the morning. It doesn't really matter when you go to sleep." And I asked them to help me, and
They jumped at it,
they
I'm
did,
sure, right?
which they,
Yeah.
they were happy to help. And this is again that's something that I felt throughout the journey. So many women are eager to help because they
Yeah.
want a solution. They want
Yeah.
something to help them, track
Yeah.
to the cycle easily. So yeah, that's what I told
So
them.
that's really neat. I'm curious too, if you have explored different ways, because we've been talking about all of the information that can be gleaned from a night's worth of temperature data, and especially when you have such a large cohort of data from all of the, how many hundreds of thousands of women who use TempDrop now, I would guess, if not in the millions.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I am curious if you've talked about ways that data can be used for kind of improving some of the other issues we see in women's health, if there's data around what your temperature looks like if you have PCOS or if you have endometriosis, and if there's any kind of research that you can talk about, either going on in that regard at TempDrop or that you're partnering with other organizations to kind of delve even further beyond the binary of trying to get pregnant, trying not to get pregnant, and what the data that TempDrop is gathering can tell us about just different issues in women's health.
Yeah, sure. So So this is really where I see TempDrop stand out from other femtech inventions or companies, because we focus so much on those patterns, and if we can identify various events or things that will be beneficial for the user. Let me give an example. We track sleep quality because we have an accelerometer inside the sensor, and the temperature, and of course the cycle days and symptoms. Just imagine you're I don't know, 44 maybe, and suddenly your cycle starts getting shorter a day or two. You don't
Yeah.
even notice that, and your sleep is also
Restful.
less.
Yeah.
Your quality of sleep is deteriorated. Yes, has deteriorated. So maybe there are the early
Yeah.
signs of menopause. Maybe it's perimenopause. Or as you said, endometriosis, higher temperatures, the early days of the menstruation could be a sign of endometriosis. So all of these things, the analysis of the patterns and the anomalies of those patterns.
Yeah.
PCOS is classical. You don't have of course, you don't have a standard
Yeah.
cycle pattern, but
Yeah.
something very different. So when you see all those phases of the cycle, it is quite easy to identify anomalies, and our goal in the future would be to indicate, listen, maybe you have this, go
Wow.
check it out.
Well, that would be really helpful to a lot of women, because we know that endometriosis in particular is so underdiagnosed because it presents so differently in so many women. But yeah, if you could isolate some temperature anomalies, and just even give women that little notification, a pop up or something that says, "Oh, this is consistent with some
Check it out.
different things. Here's some ideas to
Yeah.
take to your doctor." That's fantastic. That's really exciting that y'all are working on that sort of thing. Is that internally that you do this research, or do you partner with a university in Israel, or elsewhere in the world to analyze this?
Not yet. As I said, we're a bootstrap small company. We are working with some research. We are working with some researchers, but we haven't published yet. And we
No, that's
will.
really
We'll
exciting.
publish.
That's very cool, because that is huge, I think, for kind of raising the validity of this whole world of fertility awareness and femtech in the eyes of, doctors who still might be kind of like reluctant or reticent to admit, hey, there might be something here, because they don't have a published study right in front of them. And, we all know, everybody in the fertility awareness world knows that it's just really difficult to do good research, do good data, especially when it comes to trying to avoid versus trying to achieve, because if you're not measuring a woman's intent at the beginning and end of her cycle, and whether her intent changed somewhere over the course of that cycle, which can absolutely happen, right? If you're married and you've ever been in that space of deciding about babies versus no babies right now, sometimes your decision can change on a dime. And so if we're not measuring a couple's intent and asking them, oh, you deviated from the rules at X point when you were most fertile, was that intentional? It's really hard to get good data that you can rely upon, and then publish about it, to give people like good hard data around efficacy rates when it comes to pregnancy prevention or achievement even. So I love to hear that you guys are trying to move towards publishing, because fortunately or unfortunately, that seems to be a really big hang up for a lot of maybe like allopathic medicine, in accepting that this is legitimate information that has so much potential to better women's health. And that kind of segues me into the next big topic I want us to tackle before we wrap up, is this concern around privacy. It's a huge concern, obviously, with apps, with femtech, and women being able to trust that their data is going to stay private. And so I love to hear that you guys started thinking about doing, sharing the research with a single researcher to kind of analyze stuff, and then realized, oh, wait, we can't do that. And then you respected your users' privacy. That's huge because I don't know that that's
Of course.
necessarily the case with every femtech company. I think there's so much interest in this data and probably really big money that some maybe femtech developers are being courted with to share this data. I mean, you can just imagine what social media would do if it had this information. You know, they'd be hitting us all with ads for chocolate when they knew that we were in our luteal phase, right? So I can imagine
Yeah.
that there's a lot of interest around taking this data from femtech companies. And so I think there's such an onus on people like you, Michael, to really protect user data. And I'm happy to hear that that's something that you take seriously. And so, and I love the idea too of actually giving women the choice whether or not they want to share their de-identified data, because that goes back to what you've been talking about the roots of the TempDrop movement being in the world of fam and women wanting to share, you know, at least some information so that things can get better for all of us, right? So I think that's really
Yeah.
neat. And you know, what would you advise women to do in terms of keeping their data private when it comes to adopting new forms of femtech, not necessarily TempDrop? Are there things that women should look out for in particular before they, you know, sign up for a new app or start wearing a new device?
First of all, make sure that the app that you're using is not sharing your data. It should say in the privacy policy where no one usually reads, but please read it and make sure that no app is using your data. For us, for TempDrop, you know, it was never the case. As I said, we're very very user focused company. So it was never the case, you know, sharing the data, generating revenues from it. It was always you own the data, you have the data, you choose what to do with it. Make sure that the app that you're using has an option, you know, choose delete my data. The user needs to be able to choose that they can delete the data completely. You know, 2 steps, 3 steps, not something that requires emailing the company and stuff. It has to be straightforward. Yeah, I mean, I guess that the big apps, and I know already, you know, from reading online publications, the big apps like I think Flow and Clue and some other apps did get like, you know, a warning
Censured in
that
some
they're
way.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. For us, it was never the case. We're only using the de-identified information for improving the algorithm for internal use. We're not sharing it with anyone. And after the upcoming privacy policy update release in the app, we will start to be more involved in
That's
research
great.
work.
That's really exciting. Well, we've covered a lot of topics about femtech, about TempDrop. I'm just so excited that again we got to be the first to have you on a podcast, Michael. I think that's so cool.
I hope it was
I think
okay.
the
I hope it's
last
okay.
question I have for you is, what do you foresee for the future of femtech, including the future of TempDrop? You know, and what broadly do you like about what's happening in the femtech industry? What concerns you? What kind of caution do you think your industry needs to have in moving forward? That was a lot of questions. I said one question, but
First,
I think
about
I asked you several.
so I'll start with TempDrop
Yeah.
because it's quite easy. I'm very proud to present and announce TempDrop 2. We've launched it just 2 weeks ago. I think. Well, actually, yeah, not too many weeks ago. This is TempDrop 2. We
Very
now have
cool.
it. Yeah, very new, completely new, and the whole thing with replacing the battery was the toughest thing on the old TempDrop. So this one has a replaceable, like a cap,
Nice.
small battery lid. The armband is slightly different in color. And the sensor is improved. So this is
Very
one thing that
cool.
I'm very excited about. We new manufacturing facility. So I'm as an engineer, this
It's
is
huge,
this is what
yeah.
I've been doing for the past 2 years, I guess,
And to
and
have
it's
it sitting
finally
in front of
out.
you
So
and be able to
that's
hold it
one.
in your hands, I'm sure is huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something. That's something very nice. I think the future of Femtech. Again, as an engineer and a tech guy, I find I'm I'm very excited about the ChatGPT and Gemini and all those tools. I think that because awareness and education is the biggest gap, I think, to the adoption of
Mm-hmm.
fertility awareness methods, and those tools can really guide you through. Just imagine, I don't know, 2 or 3 years from now, those language tools can help each user, I mean, take her by the hand and lead her through, her chart. What does she see? Just imagine if you can feed the whole TCOIF book into ChatGPT and tell him, okay,
Oh,
now
wow.
answer some questions.
Yeah.
It is possible,
Yeah.
it is possible. So for me, it's really, just okay. So you have the data, and now in order to understand what to do with it, you
Yeah.
need someone to teach you. So yeah, there are all the instructors, but I'm looking towards the future and wider
Yeah.
adoption of fertility awareness methods, and the education gap can be closed with
That's
those new
interesting.
tools. And I think I'm really anxious to see how
Oh,
this
that's really
develops.
fascinating. I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, there's so, we can't all be fertility awareness instructors. So yeah, that's an interesting insight.
No, just if your goal is to get fertility awareness to as
Yeah.
many women as possible, so that as many women as possible will be able to choose and understand what's going on in their bodies, then and if those tools, those language tools, can achieve these goals,
Yeah,
then why not,
that's
right?
a really fascinating insight. I'm gonna be chewing over that one. Well, thank you, Michael. Anything else? Any last things you want to add, or have we really kind of run the gamut of this conversation at this point? Do you think?
I hope so. I hope I was okay. I hope
Oh,
I
it was
answered
wonderful. Yeah, this
questions.
was great. Yeah, I'm,
I think I
I'm, I'm
was.
very excited about this episode and that we got to interview. So thanks again, Michael Vardi, the CEO of TempDrop,
Thank you for the
for being
opportunity,
on.
Grace.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Natural Womanhood Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please drop us a review so other women and couples interested in authentic women's health can more easily find us. Also, please be sure to check us out at naturalwomanhood.org and on our Facebook, Instagram, and X accounts. And if you never want to miss an episode of the Natural Womanhood Podcast or a new Natural Womanhood article, media appearance, or our latest educational content and programming, please be sure to sign up for our newsletter, which can again be found at our website, naturalwomanhood.org. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with us, and we'll see you next time.